today, the death of fashion icon Kate Spade. Police say the designer, they believe she killed herself in her Upper East Side apartment in New York City yesterday morning. We don't know why Spade chose to commit suicide, if that's what her cause of death is ruled. But police sources say she left behind some sort of note that mentioned her husband, Andy Spade, and their 13-year-old daughter. In an interview from this past April, Spade spoke about the advice she wished she would have followed when starting her iconic fashion line.
Is there anything you know now that you wish you had known back then?
Yes, to worry less. I wish I worried less. I think I worried throughout the company and...
Still do.
Yeah, still do.
To talk about the death of Kate Spade, I want to bring in Judy Ho. She's a familiar sight to you. She's a clinical psychologist, and you hear that soundbite now, and it seems painful to hear that she was worrying. I think we have to focus on the people left behind. I keep thinking about, maybe the rest of the world is like, I can't believe she's gone, but there's a family in deep trauma right now, wondering why, how they missed the signs. And I think about that 13-year-old daughter.
Absolutely. The family that's left behind by individuals who complete suicide are generally our greatest concern, because these individuals, it's hard. You don't have answers anymore. You can't get those answers post-mortem, of course. And so you're trying to rack your brain thinking about the last thing that you've said, thinking about why you didn't say something different, whether or not why they did what they did, if you could have caught it for them, if you could have helped them further. And so it produces a lot of grief, and this grief is hard to process because they can't get those answers anymore. And particularly for that 13-year-old, it's a really key moment for a 13-year-old's life. They're wrestling with identity development, all these other preteen and teen issues.
Hormones are changing.
Oh my gosh.
A girl needs her mom at that time.
Oh, absolutely. And so that attachment gets broken, and then you're trying to look for who to go to those, go for that answer and that support, and that primary figure is no longer there.
Grief isn't the only emotion that comes up. Anger often comes up as well.
Absolutely. And when we talk about the Kubler-Ross process of grief, there is sort of a stage of anger and resentment of how could you do this to me? It becomes more about themselves. Of course it does, because they're really sad about the loss of that relationship. And I think that anger often is just a type of transformation of sadness, because you need to have a more active emotion to try to process this. But the anger is really just a filter for all of the things that are just left unsaid.
How do we, as friends and loved ones, help someone who has lost a person to suicide? I know that we all struggle with death to begin with, right? This adds another layer. And we tend to put on kid gloves. We tend to want to avoid the topic, or we're awfully overwrought.
Right.
What's your best counsel?
Well, I think everybody deals obviously with grief differently. So as a loved one, to support people like Kate Spade's family, it's really about checking in with them to see what they need. Sometimes they might want to talk about it more openly, and they might need to be treated with kid gloves from time to time. But really asking them, what is it that you need today? I think that's really the place to start, because they will need different things at different times as that grief processing changes.
And what about, I do have to end with this because this is so very important. What are the signs that we need to look for if there's somebody that's in our family that may be having a very private struggle with contemplating life or death?
Absolutely. Some major signs: talking about death more often, talking about their own death and the deaths of other people, possibly talking about giving prized possessions away or actually starting to give some of those prized possessions away. A huge sense of isolation and loneliness, and changing their behavioral routine. For example, going to sleep much later or going to sleep much earlier, just hiding in general from the rest of their activities and not coming and showing up. Those are really big signs to watch.
This number's on your screen. You know what? Even if you don't think this is relevant to you, write it down. You don't know what a private struggle could be being waged near you or around you. 1-800-273-TALK, or you can text the number 741-741. Text the word HOME to that number. Judy Ho, thank you so much, and we hope people will reach out when they need help.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Michaela.